July meeting going. We have approval of minutes.
There's a couple misspellings, but
Okay.
some on this page. I can send it to you.
Yeah, that'd be fine. I just didn't run it through grammar or anything.
There was one correction on page 4 under policy again that I just want to clarify. There had been, Hannah had asked if the Humane Society helps with situations where owner is relinquishing their ill or injured animal because they cannot afford vet care. And I don't know exactly how I conveyed it, but it would be highly unlikely that the Humane Society would assist with vet care where someone came to the shelter to surrender an animal because they can't afford vet bills, because that person should have already tried other avenues before reaching that point. But we do assist with low income on a case-by-case basis, as I stated, and we would, in some rare cases, we would step up and pay to have an animal euthanized because we don't want to see any animal suffer at all.
Okay, so that wasn't said during that meeting, which that's fine.
Right.
But I think what I put is what was said. I tried to like get it word for word what you were saying. Do you see where? Because I go back and listen to my recordings because I always record all the meetings.
Okay.
So do you see anything that needs to be changed? It's fine for you to
No,
provide that
I wanted to
clarity.
clarify on it to be sure
Yeah.
where it was at, and that's fine. I'm not pushing that wording in the minutes actually
Okay.
has to be changed.
Okay, that's fine. I tried to provide what you had said, so it's fine for you to clarify that, but I just did what was said in the last meeting.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to adopt the minutes
You have a second?
Second.
with
All
the
in
spelling
favor?
corrections.
Aye.
Guess we can go with Lindsay's report then.
Okay. Animal control wise, 17 dogs for county, or no, 17 animals for county, sorry. 7 of those were dogs, 10 were cats, 4 total were from Hanover. And then for the city, there was 7 total, 3 were cats, 4 for dogs.
Oops, you're going down a little bit.
It is, yes, yes. So a lot of the reason that's going down, and this is in my new news thing, but Paul Guyman successfully relocated 14 dogs back to their owners before having to bring them to the shelter just this month. That is one of the most impressive things. Like, as somebody who's done that job before, that's really impressive. That's time consuming. There's a lot of communication that you have to go through, a lot of Facebook nonsense and stuff like that, but he successfully returned 14 dogs before they even made it back to the shelter. So kudos to him, that's really impressive. So that is the main reason why our intake is the way it is, because he did that.
How many owners surrendered?
I have that already here. Owner surrenders 2.
And Good Samaritan?
Good Samaritan drop-offs 15. All cats.
Kittens or?
Both. Owners for both. And then return to owner guardian 6. So 6 of those, out of all those, 6 of those went back to their mom and dad. Adoption was 32.
do the owners have to pay anything if the ACO
If it
takes
is,
them back to them?
yeah, well, the ACO won't take them back to them, they have to come to the shelter to get them. If they come to the shelter and are not repeat offenders and they get there within 24 hours, I don't. Anything after that's $15 a day. Because I understand things happen. My dogs have run off before, so I get it. If they get there, within a day, it's understandable, but we always, make sure they're not repeat offenders. That's why we take driver's license.
I'm not objecting to that approach, but it's not in line at all with our county ordinances. It's difficult to have a county ordinance that's written that it's to be a $30 minimum fee, and then we're not charging anything. And then we also charge more if it's a second time on the animal, so.
We do charge
How
more if it's a
how do
second
we
time.
reach the point that it's whose authority it is to waive that fee?
For the first 24 hours?
Yes, if they come in the first 24, there's
I
nothing in
mean,
our ordinances that addresses that
Oh, sorry.
at all. I mean,
Yeah.
if we're gonna have that policy, that's something we need to approach the commissioners about and have them match it up, because it just doesn't work well when we have language in our ordinance and then we're doing something different.
took it upon myself to do that. I mean, I'll sit down with him and talk about it too, but I just felt like that in certain situations, if it's an elderly person, if somebody's at work and they can't get there before we close.
I'm not arguing against it, I'm just
Yeah.
stating that it needs to match up, because
Okay.
it's not what we do now. And if you run into problems, it's not likely that State Board of Accounts will look into that much detail.
Mhm.
But if State Board of Accounts ever has reason to take a detailed look, they want very clean paper trails, they
Right.
want an explanation. Well, why didn't you follow what your ordinance fee said it was supposed to be? You probably have some of the same issues on lowering adoption fees.
Right,
And, but our adoption fees and the ordinances aren't matching up with what we've passed in the policy now anyway.
right.
And I don't know that the policy's ever been approved by the commissioners, has it? To my knowledge.
To my knowledge.
Okay.
This is just this month's report of claims, if anybody wants to see it, everything that was turned into the month. Yeah, that's just a big lot.
What's our, your total at the shelter?
Anyway,
Total number of dogs and cats?
Oh, 19 dogs. 53 cats. Out of all those cats, 12 are adults. And of the dogs, 4 are puppies. I don't know if that's relevant. And 2 live in shelter cats. I don't ever count them in the population, but they live there. So the monthly dollar amounts brought into the shelter, adoptions total 840. 3 of those were bedded feral cats at $10 a piece. They had really no other option of a life other than a barn. They weren't very people friendly, but they were bedded. Fines paid 45, owner relinquished 30. And that is all the stats.
I watched the City of Madison City Council meeting last night, and there was an award issued to Janet, which appreciate her end of it.
Yeah.
And then also Lindsay was there and was there with Hannah, and Hannah had brought up the shelter. There was a couple of things. Hannah had brought up that she had a thick file of kill records from the shelter, and went on to say that these had been animals that were killed for no reason, and they were healthy and adoptable and so forth. So first I wanted to do a public records request to get a copy of that kill record file.
That would go to the county. It's
From
not the
you.
county.
Yeah, but wanted to get it from you. You said you had it and so
That's fine.
forth, so that's fine. You can give that to Ray if you would, please. And then went on to state that Lindsay had moved the status of her shelter to a no-kill shelter as such. And, we haven't completed our euthanasia policy yet, but I wanted to ask, since you've been there, Lindsay, how many animals have we euthanized?
Total, there's been 2 dogs and 6 cats total.
Okay, so 2 dogs and 6 cats total that we've euthanized. How many animals have we had die at the shelter?
We have several kittens die at the shelter. They come in and, you try, your first option is to always try to get them vet care, and sometimes antibiotics don't work and things happen.
Well, it must be more than several, because if we've had only euthanized 8,
I would have to run a report and
right, I
I can get you a
understand, but
good
we've
number
only
on that.
euthanized 8 that you're telling me, and we currently have 8 bodies at the shelter in freezers, and they just picked up 18. It's more like maybe as many as 20 have died at the shelter.
Some of those are litters of kittens that come in, and within the first 24 hours, there's nothing you can do for them, and it just happens before you can, you try to help them before you go and kill them.
Well, the reason I follow up, it was very, very alarming for me today. I was at the shelter, Hannah was there at the same time, Bobby was there, so forth, and stopped in. I usually like to stop in and take a look at the facility before our meetings and get an idea. Out in the main lobby, I noticed, and it's not a newborn kitten, probably a kitten that I would guess 12, 15 weeks old. Is that ballpark?
12.
About 12 weeks old. And the kitten is in a cage with 2 other cats, and the kitten appears to be dead to me. And I look a little closer, and I'm fairly convinced that the cat's dead. You know, I've watched for eye movement and so forth, and I'm also alarmed because it's in there with 2 other cats that are just pestering the hell out of it. You know, it's in a blanket, and they're trying to play with it. And I say something, well, it appears you have a dead cat here. And I'm immediately assured, oh no, it's not dead, but it may be here before long. And I cannot imagine that it is acceptable to us that we are bringing animals that are sick or ill or injured, and we're not euthanizing, that we don't get those animals. It upset me. I had to leave the shelter for a minute, and then I came back, and I offered to take the animal to a vet to have it euthanized. And when I came back, it was less than 3-4 minutes. Well, it's passed.
The cat did pass.
So I was probably correct when I was looking at it and said it was
Probably is.
dead. You know, very unusual that it wasn't dead, and it's more shocking, the staff that was there, it was just very nonchalant. No, it's not dead, but it probably will be before long. And I don't understand that. That's been my main concern on this idea of a no-kill status, of to bring in animals that are sick, ill, injured, and I understand there's, you know, at least anywhere from 20 or more animals that have died in the shelter as
I don't
such.
think you're understanding what no-kill status is.
Well, but I'm not arguing about no-kill status. My status, the question is, what's happening at the shelter?
Yeah,
And that's not acceptable to me. If that's part of a no-kill shelter, to allow animals to die within the shelter on their own, I'm not in favor of that.
It's
Now,
not, and
Lindsay assured me on this animal that that the animals that have came back in and died on their own, that Dr. Barron has looked at those animals and approved them coming back to the shelter. Did I understand?
With
And you're operating
antibiotics.
under vet orders.
Yeah, I follow all her vet orders. I follow everybody's vet orders that come. When they get sick, I take them to the vet. They come back with antibiotics, and I give them antibiotics as directed. And if it works, that's perfectly.
Who makes the decision whether to euthanize a given animal? Who makes the decision whether to euthanize a given animal? Is that your decision, or is that Dr. Barron's decision?
If they're at the vet's office, then I consult with her before I do it.
But who makes the decision?
I
You
ultimately
make the
will make the
decision.
decision, but I will consult with the vet
Right.
before I do so.
Right. Well, I think that we need to take a very hard look that we're having the number of animals that come back to that facility and die in the facility. You know, I have no use, no patience for that. I think that that is a very inhumane direction to go, that there is, needs to be a little bit more reality put into where things stand. That's been my concern on this situation of wanting to move so hard towards a no-kill shelter.
A no-kill shelter is not to say we save every animal. It's to reach 90%.
I understand that.
Please let me speak, Mr. I'm sure you had your opportunity.
I will.
A no-kill status means you're saving 90% of what is adoptable. So this has nothing to do with like no-kill status. No-kill status is you're saving 90% of what is adoptable. As Lindsay told you, when I was in there and I came in after you, and I hadn't seen the cat, you were the first to point it out, that cat was running around and seemed perfectly healthy earlier in the day, and then all of a sudden it took a turn for the worse. She was trying to pull reports for you and could not see what was going on. You pointed it out to Lindsay, and the second you left the room, Lindsay picked up the cat, said you gotta euthanize it, and then it died in her arms.
I find it difficult to believe that the cat wasn't already dead. You know,
Well, that's right. I was there,
It
and
was
so was
not.
Bobby.
I was in there before you. The
And
cat
it-
was,
and
now
the-
let me
the
finish.
cat-
No,
The cat
Bobby
was
has an
not
opportunity
dead.
to speak.
It's a,
Excuse
Hey.
you. Go ahead, Bobby.
The cat was not dead. because the staff went over and it was very lethargic at that time, but it was not dead. It went downhill in a matter of minutes. I don't know what happened to it, but it was not dead minutes before you got there, so.
What can cause a cat to do that? Just
It was like
anything.
5 to 7
Something about
minutes.
seeing it. I couldn't say without seeing it.
Because it was
Before
running
or
and jumping
anything.
earlier in the day in that cage, perfectly healthy black cat.
And then it was like Warren said, that cat's dead. He walked out, Lindsay took it out, it wasn't dead, and then it died. It just died in our arms, and I was like, what's happening? How does this happen?
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple things in a shelter environment that it could have been without actually seeing it. I couldn't tell you what it was. And I didn't see that cat. I went to the shelter on Friday
Yes.
and looked at cats and talked about upper respiratory disease, and we were getting set up with medications to treat some of those cats that were there, but I did not look at that cat in particular that you're talking about.
Right, she assessed all of them,
Yeah.
did a walkthrough.
The response that we got was that staff was very aware that the cat was in bad shape. They were very aware that they expected the cat to die shortly. And so it had been left to die shortly versus euthanizing the cat.
The cat was on the medication list. I went through and I made a list of every cat in that shelter that looked like that it could use the medication to get it better. It was on the medication list, so yeah,
And are you doing euthanizations now?
I have not.
You have not.
No.
So if it had been something, we would have had to seen to getting a vet or someone else to have done that today, correct? Okay. So I'm concerned with the number of animals that are dying in the shelter.
Okay.
And I think that it's extremely important on the reports that we get on a monthly basis that we get complete and accurate information on number of animals in, out, number that die, number that are euthanized.
Okay.
When Jenny was at the shelter, we did get that information on a regular basis. And she would have, that yes, there was, a litter of 20 or something, not a litter, that's exaggerating, but a large number of kittens, but it had been respiratory virus and so forth, and that's noted. It wasn't because they were not adoptable and overcrowded.
I can get that report through PetCoin, but every time I come to one of these meetings, another report is asked for, so we just need to make a list of all the reports that you want me to bring, that way I
Well,
don't miss
they need to be
anything.
put together in a handout to where there's some, all that information is on 1 or 2 pages. And we got that all in the past, and
I don't know
it's-
how Jenny did
it's
things
something
in the past, I
important
didn't
to-
get to see it.
Right. Well, it's something I've talked about several times here as far as on the reports. I've offered to come in and help with an Excel worksheet if we needed to and so forth.
This is what they'll look like, these are the reports that, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. I can run more and in
Right, we
different
need a
versions.
handout for each board
Yes.
member, and you can kind of track and you pull it in. We could look at, for example, to the number of animals adopted and then the number of dollars collected.
Right.
And you ran through the math to be sure those things
Yes.
matched up. Would have been aware that we aren't collecting for owner surrenders in a lot of cases.
Okay.
That would have shown up on the report, and need to go back and address some of that, like I said earlier with the commissioners, if we're not going to collect those fees or adoption fees are going to be lower than what's set. It gets to be an issue, but I am still extremely alarmed over what appears to be a fairly larger number of animals that have died at the shelter versus being euthanized. Because in the numbers you're talking about, 20 and so forth, those aren't kittens. Those aren't like a litter of kittens that are in that number, because they don't take those, you said. So,
They don't pay you for them, but they take them.
right.
But they pay you for the animals that they can donate to
Mhm.
science,
Right, I
yes.
understand.
But they take all of them.
New business.
Kane Fencing, right? Is that the company's name? We'll be building a perimeter fence and 4 kennel run play areas here pretty soon for the dogs. We're going to insulate 2 of the back kennels. We're gonna put key fobs on them with codes, and so the police and animal control have those codes. That way they have a safe place to put the dogs if they are in the middle of the night, have to drop one off. It'll be a lot easier with the perimeter fence. Of course, they'll have the code to the perimeter fence too. It'll be a lot more secure. There will be an adoption event at PetSense this Saturday from 11 to 4. There has been much progress made on social media. Chelsea worked really hard to improve this. She worked really hard with Kelly Rogers back here. She's helped tremendously working with her. She's just doing a good job on it. I'm working on getting the staff trained like Universal. Everybody knows a little bit of everything. Jessica's doing a really good job with the report of claims and learning payroll. She's smart as a whip. She caught right on. So we are making improvements there. But the social media thing is huge. Just since that she has made that improvement on social media, we had 7 adoptions this weekend. Well, 4 adoptions, 3 fosters. But that's big.
That's good.
That's big, and every one of them that came in the door referred to our social media, and I'm really proud of Chelsea for that.
I've noticed an uptick in the.
Yeah, she's doing great.
Activity, that's correct, I agree
Yeah.
with that.
We got to honor Janet last night, very well deserved. Just couldn't get any better of a human being. She doesn't let the world change her, even though she has every reason to let it change her. She's just Janet. I'm thankful for her. She deserved a lot more, but I'm really happy that we got to do that for her last night. That's all the new.
I'd like to add to your fencing, remember there's four new
Yes.
8 by 30 foot runs for the dogs to exercise in off the side of the building, so.
Yes.
Are they putting a concrete floor in them, or what are you going to do
No,
there?
not at this point.
Gravel, or gonna put gravel in them then?
We ain't got that floor.
runs. Just grass runs.
Probably for right now.
Yeah.
There'll
So-
need to be something, either gravel or concrete. I understand the concrete's a problem, but I would think that grass is going to be a problem to keep it clean and so forth. I don't know for
Cross
sure
that
what the
fence
other
when it
options
comes to
are.
it, so to speak. But right now, they'll have some exercising room anyway.
Yes, that's good.
And
Great.
kudos to Bill Barnes Community Foundation jumped in, come up with the funding for it, so that's why we were able to, the fence has been on order for a couple of weeks now, so hopefully it'll be appearing anytime soon.
And it's the same company that did our kennels, and our
They're
kennels are fantastic.
yeah.
Did the air conditioning fix?
We did. Danny Jones, big shout out to Danny Jones. He put a bigger unit in that was already in there, and he's a really nice guy. He
Yeah.
came in, he handled that really well.
You know,
2
the dogs
days.
need sweaters.
And Kelly's Plumbing came by to look at the raw sewage. The city even sent their people out to confirm there was no issues. It was not raw sewage, it was just runoff. They dug, they found no issues, so that's good.
Okay, old business.
Well, I was curious if we need to have the commissioners review and make some changes, like I said, not only on some of these ordinances that have to do with animal adoptions and reclaim and so forth, so they're matched, but also our interlocal agreement, as I believe Hannah had even pointed out early on, that she had looked at it, and it doesn't match up with what we actually do. You know, it calls for 6 members, and we have 7 members. I believe the 7th one was added because of Hanover participating and won a seat, but nothing was ever done formally in it. It gets a little awkward because the agreement or the ordinance does not give any authority to the shelter board at all, except for to advise on shelter manners and to select an operator. And so it gets to be a problem as to the general public, in my opinion, seems to think that the shelter board is responsible for the operations of the shelter, but yet it's very limited as to what we have control over. And then it's very awkward as well. We don't have the ability to hold an executive session to do employee evaluations or staff evaluations. That all falls to the commissioners as such. And you know, I know the commissioner's attitude. Bobby said, well, he doesn't want to micromanage. But yet on the other hand, somewhere along the line, there needs to be a certain amount of oversight and some way to answer some of those types of things. I don't know if we don't need the interlocal anymore, if the commissioners, it was done originally when the county wasn't going to have employees at the shelter. It had never existed until the Humane Society had put forth a proposal to be the operator of the shelter and get paid a flat number of dollars. So they put the interlocal together as a way to get some of the money and then as a way to pick who the operator would be. That's why there's language in it that the appointee from the Humane Society can't vote on issues that would have to do with Humane Society, because they were considering that Humane Society would be operating, which we did for a number of years. But it's needs some changes in my opinion. You know, there seems to be personnel issues that probably need to be addressed. We have 2 personnel now that have been fired, and both of those were related to being upset with problems in the facility and not having a clear path on how to address that. They went to commissioners and they went to the mayor, and that had been a problem. You know, there was a thought that there needed to be a procedure that they could go through. And, you know, it's been conveyed to me, and I believe it's probably accurate, that employees have been brought together and told that if you talk to anyone outside of myself or the commissioners about problems at the shelter, you'll be terminated.
That is not accurate.
Yeah.
The terminations are due to complaints.
We can't really talk personnel though.
No, I'm not
Yeah.
talking that, I'm just telling that that's what was conveyed strongly, and it's very clearly, I know that happened with the one for certain that back in December, that was, you know, it came to a commissioners meeting and voiced things, and immediately, and before that, for 6 months, had sent emails and so forth to commissioners and not gotten any responses or satisfaction. So I don't know exactly how we deal with that, but it's, I know that employees are very scared to voice any concerns that they have at the shelter now, that they won't have a
They're
job.
free to voice anything that they would like
I
to
think you're
voice, and I
making-
don't hold them back from anything.
You're
I do
making
not know
assumptions.
It's-
You're making
No, I'm
assumptions.
not
Yeah.
making
No,
so.
You
you're
don't
not
know the
making
employees
assumptions.
there?
Mhm.
Have any of them told you that they're scared?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
The
yes.
employees there?
Yes, an employee told me that, yes,
I don't believe you.
yes.
But that's fine, Lauren, you can continue to make your assumptions.
You are welcome to sit down and speak to any of those employees that you need to speak to. Not one of them scared
They didn't seem a bit apprehensive.
to tell you what they think. Yeah, exactly.
When I went in on Friday, I specifically made sure that I spoke with each of the employees that were there individually, and they were very forthcoming with information.
I think I saw a hand raise.
That was
I don't know.
me. Is there not an HR that people go to?
They do have,
So
it's
they
in
do
the-
have an HR?
Mhm.
So why are they,
It's a
rather than going
commissioner.
through HR, why are they going to the mayor or to the commissioner? Why don't they go to the HR with their complaints? That's usually how it's done. And then also, is there not a procedure? They did. No. Okay, then that should be the answer. They did go to HR according to Tammy. Do you guys not have a set procedures on
Protocol
how?
procedures.
Protocol procedures?
There's write-ups, there's.
No, I mean for the whole shelter.
Oh.
Is there not a procedure that when people come in, this is what you do, this is what you
Yes,
do?
yes, I
And
didn't know
there's
what you meant by that, yes.
Procedures like that?
Mhm. Like, you mean people in their workstations? Like,
Well, there
like
should be
clean-
a set of
Yeah, can you
procedures and protocols put in place there. And I know back when I applied for that position,
Okay.
there was nothing there when I asked.
I get what you're
Yeah.
saying
It was
now.
not
Yes.
there for any employer, employee, or
Okay.
even for the boss.
Is there an
You know.
employee handbook?
There is an employee handbook,
Okay.
yes.
Okay,
All right.
good. I don't, personally, hearsay to me does not work.
Yeah.
You can't hearsay. You can't take what, I heard and I heard. That's not the way you proceed. That's not the way you
For me,
proceed.
it would be, you go to HR, you write it down, you have it documented. And then whoever else that person goes to, it needed to be documented there too. Otherwise, it's just all hearsay.
Or it's in our minutes from the county commissioners meeting.
That's true too, if it's there,
It is.
But it should have started at HR.
And it is.
And did that employee know who HR was?
Yes, she did.
Yes.
Yes, because HR does all the preliminary paperwork when
Right.
they
Yeah.
are hard on all their pertinent information, so. it's-
So where does all the, the emails?
There is nothing in the employee handbook, though, that spells out, here's the route for complaints. I mean, there isn't anything that lays
There should
out
be.
that, I know there should be, but it's not there in the
That's
county
how
employee
any
handbook.
company is run.
There's not
You do
there.
have
And
those-
I don't believe at this time that we have job descriptions for each of the employees at the shelter, do we? Do we have written job descriptions?
Kennel tags full-time employees.
But we don't have any written job descriptions.
Not specifically, no,
Right.
but I would like to have some, yes.
Right.
And that would be something in time,
Yes,
because
I
I know
would like to have those.
you're still getting things
Yeah.
together to be
Yes.
able to put something together.
Yep.
To put people in appropriate positions that they're gonna,
Right.
could benefit the animals.
You know,
yes.
maybe if we got a hold of another shelter and got some of their procedures and looked them
That
up
would be
online,
helpful.
just to get an overall of what can help you better. You know, because it's not your fault, it's just gonna take a matter of time to get it all worked out, the bugs, and put things in place.
And to bring back the HR question, so, the county should have a policy in place on how to deal with that, not the animal shelter specific, because the employees of the shelter are county employees, and I'm sure that the county does have something on the books of this is the procedure for complaints.
When
So
you
it
have an
doesn't-
issue, you go to your supervisor or the director.
Yep.
You don't
There is
circumvent.
Yeah.
nothing in the employee policy that outlines.
On the county or?
On the county, on
Okay.
the county's employee policy. There's nothing in their employee policy
That
that
sounds like-
outlines that procedure as such.
So that sounds
There-
like a county issue,
there-
not an animal shelter board issue.
It affects both, it comes into
Well,
play.
it sounds like
It's a-
the county
it's an
needs to
area
address
there.
it and
Yes.
update their policy, their
I
handbooks,
mean,
their
it affects all
policies.
departments.
It does, it would affect every single county department, so, not just animal shelter.
It's difficult to put lots of policies in place for the animal shelter when you're constantly putting out fires.
Yes,
Exactly.
And that's been what you've been doing for the past 6 months, is putting out fires.
yes,
Everybody seems to be chasing their tail.
yes. It's distracting. Yes.
One more thing, and as far as whoever the employee was, it said, well, the cat's gonna be dead soon anyway. That person should be talked to and told how to address anyone coming into the shelter if they see, you know.
And when you do that, you do that away from the public that's in
Exactly,
the
don't
lobby,
do
not
it
in
in
front of
public
them.
place.
Right.
Well,
And
they
it should
should
go
have,
to you.
whoever it was should have just said, you need to speak with you,
Yeah,
and let you handle it.
exactly.
I think sometimes just because of all of the noise that has been happening at the animal shelter, your employees are starting to get shooken up a little bit.
Yes.
And so they're starting to do things like that, like the incident that happened today, just because it's nonstop, honestly, harassment happening at the shelter.
It's a lot of drama for an animal shelter.
And it's
It really is,
unnecessary.
it's a lot of drama for an animal shelter, and you gotta think of it like this, they're kids. I mean, they're not kids, but to me, they're kids, and,
They're learning.
they're learning,
Yeah.
and it's a lot for them to, it's a lot of emotional stress for them to handle. And, every one of them handles it differently, they've all got very different personalities, and it is a lot on them.
Well, it's a lot on you as well. I understand it's a very difficult position, but that's why I feel there needs to be some involvement. You were our best choice. We went through the resume, so on and so forth. But before you started this job, at least according to the resume, there's absolutely zero management or supervision experience.
Right.
And for anyone to be dumped into that role and not have any management or supervision experience,
Choice.
and probably a younger workforce, it's even more difficult to handle than usual. That there needs to be a little bit more, I feel, a little more involvement or oversight of some sort to help those things along.
But you think
It's a lot to expect to know right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I did to some extent at the last animal shelter I was at. There's only 2 of us. There's co-pilots.
And then there was another job that you supervised.
No, she didn't supervise. She took calls and gave information out to housekeeping, I believe.
but there's Belterra, there's Dorman. Yeah, there was a clerk position. It was an overseeing of employees, giving out work and stuff like that, yeah.
So there was some supervision experience in your background.
And more old business, update on security cameras.
No, on my part.
Okay.
We'll get on it.
I'm sorry, I have one other thing.
Okay.
Is there a management training class that she can attend? I know she's probably so busy, but I mean, anything to help her, you know?
Well, I spoke.
I'm not shooting her, I'm just trying to, is there something there extra? Because I know where I came from, we always offered management meetings to bring up, you know, to bring them up to where they needed to be.
Right, I spoke with one of the other commissioners, and that was one of his ideas, that, you know, especially election time coming up, and, you know, some of the people getting elected don't have management experience, and they're looking into you know, just a basic management education course for all employees, you know, anybody who needs it.
So would that be a course off-site or a webinar type situation?
I'm not sure, he just, you know, that was
Could be either.
just his initial thoughts on it, but
There's also online courses specifically for animal shelter environment, animal welfare league that go through like, there's actually a certification program that you can do that is an animal shelter manager certification program. And then ASPCA Pro has webinars that you can do, and I can't remember the name of the other organization that does the certification program, but that was something that we had mentioned when we were originally looking for a director, about doing those programs.
I'd be open to it. I don't know if it's-
I think what's even more difficult is that when Lindsay came into the shelter, there was
No direction.
There's no direction. It was here's 80 cats, here's a full shelter of dogs, figure it out. There was no direction, there was no onboard training, because we were left in a situation where the animal shelter director just up and left the animals. And prior to that, the animal shelter was closed to the public and working from home during COVID, which, how do you do that? So it really was a situation where there was just no protocols put into place. And Lindsay's been tasked with turning the shelter around, getting these animals out of there, taking on the staff that was there, trying to move the shelter forward and hoping that the staff will grow with her, having, honestly getting harassed by some people from the public, and then having to deal with the board disagreeing and being told she needs to do her basic job plus more, plus do this, plus we need this, and there was no structure when she came in.
Exactly.
With the health department, and I don't know if the animals have the same kind of thing, but with the health departments, because we just hired a new administrator who has really no experience either.
Okay.
They have district meetings with the health departments, the surrounding counties, and like
Right.
once a month, they just get on the computer together. It's kind of a Zoom meeting, and they can, so you have other people who've been in their jobs for a while who can kind of mentor
Right.
you, you know, they're in the same position, and they can say, oh, well, we had that come up, and this is what we did, and just kind of give you some other ideas. I don't know if there's anything similar.
I'd have to look into it. I don't know. I've
But
never heard of
with-
anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think what she's done since she's came in is phenomenal, what she was handed. Because the way it's cleaned up, it always smells like Mr. Clean when I go in over there. She just needs some space to do her work. That's the problem.
Well, I personally, since I've been coming here since I first moved here, she always seems to be under the gun and in front of the firing squad every time she comes to this meeting, which I do not think is fair. If you're going to do that, then you need some direction. You need some positive. All we get here is negative all the time. It's negative, negative, negative.
You've got to give her a lot of positive before you can
Yes.
throw some bullets at her. But she walked into a ball of fire. I
We
know
all
that.
know that, you all know that, and tonight it was Jenny did it this way. Well, Jenny didn't do a very good job. She did a really poor job. That's just a fact, and we all know that.
Yeah.
And she's still in a situation, I mean, your cat room sucks. I'm sorry, it just does.
We all agree.
Cat room sucks, I'm surprised.
The whole building sucks.
Quite honestly, I'm surprised the cat survived. It's just a bad situation, and finding one cat, and I'm sure maybe there were more, finding one cat in there anything could have happened to that kitten in there.
Could have got laid on and smothered.
You don't know what happened.
There's a lot of things that can happen.
You know, nobody
I
knows, and
want to
nobody.
clarify, this, I understand completely and would agree. You can walk in and you can find an animal dead in a kin or a page
It
and
happens
have
all
no
the time.
idea one way or the
Yeah.
other. But that's not the situation here. The situation is here, they know the cat was struggling.
Who knows the cat was
Lindsay knew the
struggling?
cat was struggling. The other person in the shelter knew the cat was struggling.
So
And they had decided that the cat was probably going to die.
decided.
Lindsay had decided the cat was probably going to die. That was what was
Did
conveyed.
you ask Lindsay, and that's what she
Is
told
it
you?
that, yes.
The cat was laying in a blanket and there was no coming back from it. It was going to pass away, but earlier that day, that cat was up
So
rolling
you're
in a
upset
blanket.
that she didn't euthanize
I am
the cat?
upset that they didn't
The
euthanize the
cage.
cat versus, yes.
I don't think Lindsay could have
And I never saw a cat.
picked up the cat,
Yeah.
excused herself from everyone that was in the building at the time, went and got the euthanization medicine and administered it in time. I think the cat, like that situation, that
That
cat,
cat would have been gone before
it
I
was
would have been able
gone,
to do that.
it was gone.
Yes.
Did Lindsay tell you it's just gonna pass away, or was it the employee that told you that?
Both agreed that the cat was going to die before very long.
Come out of my mouth, but yes, the cat was going to die.
Did they ever
Yes.
remove it from the kennel and put it in a place where it might not contaminate or cause harm to other
It
people?
was in with two other cats, wrapped up, somebody had put it up in a blanket as such, and then I left for a few minutes and came back, and they said that it had died in the few minutes I was gone. I was gone less than 4 or 5
The
minutes.
cat died in Lindsay's arms.
And, because I came back after leaving and decided that, really needed to get the animal to a vet to euthanize it if the shelter wasn't going to address the problem.
Well, it sounds like it's a training situation.
I just want to comment here.
I know that there-
This
Yeah,
is my
we're
first
gonna
meeting,
decide.
so my name
No,
is.
no,
I had
she's-
like,
Oh,
Hang on.
Thanks, guys.
Hang on,
Kelly.
Kelly.
With that.
Hang on,
Hey,
one
guys.
second.
Hey, we got a lady?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
My name is Kelly Rogers. I'm fairly new and this is my first meeting and I've been working with Lindsay and her team over the last several weeks. And I could sit here and go on for hours of how impressed I am with them. Mr., is your name Warren? Is that what I heard?
Warren.
Okay. I don't think you really understand. Even when you're in the room, your perspective has got to be completely different. I've been in there several times over the last couple of weeks. I've seen a couple charge at her and try to go steal dogs. I've called the police. The other people have had to call the police. I don't think you comprehend on the slightest amount of what she deals with on a daily basis. And having somebody be so critical about one situation that you don't know the whole picture, you're not there day in and day out, you don't know what they deal with. You're talking about a cat that died. What do you think that does to the team? What do you think that does to the people in the room that they couldn't save that cat? There's nobody in that room that wants to see an animal die. There's nobody in that room that wants to see an animal suffer. And for you to be so accusatory is disgusting. And I don't understand, because I would think that if you're in this room, your best interest is for animals. But instead, you're attacking people and just trying to say, well, it's in the name of animals. That's not it.
My best interest is, first off, public safety, public welfare, and so forth is the county's first obligation. Second comes in, as President of the Humane Society as well, is the humane care of the animals. And it wasn't addressing just a matter of one animal. There's a history of a number of animals that have been allowed to die in the shelter versus recognizing when they were ill and going ahead and euthanizing. There can be differing opinions. I am of a stronger opinion that it is more humane if when you see that it's probably going to be fatal, that you go ahead and euthanize that animal versus let it lay for 2-3 days and die.
It didn't lay for 2 to 3 days, Warren.
There have been animals at the shelter.
But do you
that have been
understand, see, and I can agree with you. You know what, I can see some common ground here. There are times, I've had a lot of animals in my life, and I can remember in my 20s when I knew my first dog that I had, I knew I was gonna have to put him down. And I asked that vet, how do you know? And he said, well, it's your animal, you'll know. When you're dealing with 50, 60, you know what, your judgment may be different, but you're not in her seat every single day.
No, I understand
Respect
that.
No, I don't think you understand that.
Yes, I do. I have been in
don't think you
her,
understand
I have
that.
been in her seat. The
Because I've been
Humane
in here for
Society,
the last hour, and all I've heard from you is berating her. And I've seen the amount of work she does, and what she has to put up with, and then to come here after working a 10, 12-hour day, and get no support from the people in this room, not everybody, I'm saying, but to have even one individual that doesn't support her, makes no sense to me at all. Why can't you support her? Why, you haven't even asked her, what can you do? All you want to do is control with ordinances and paper and process. But you know what? The real world happens. And
Well, first-
instead, you could support her in other ways. Instead, you go into the shelter and just judge her and the whole staff in the situation. That doesn't do anybody any good.
first, I have a very thorough understanding of what she's up against at the shelter. The Humane Society operated the shelter for a number of years. I was there 8, 9-hour days at certain times, had other people at the Humane Society that put in many, many more hours than I did. But I was there, answered questions, dealt with public, dealt with
Then where's your
animals, so
compassion?
forth.
Where's your compassion?
So I have been there.
Why so angry?
Well, my compassion is for the
Where's your
animal.
empathy?
My compassion was for the
Where's your
animal.
kindness?
The compassion was for the animals that have been left to
These are
die
people, too.
versus euthanizing them. And I have compassion and empathy for people. I also find, though, that there has to be a certain amount of accountability. And, you know, you have to
But
have good
what stone do
information
you
coming
stand
in.
on? What throne are you standing on that you need to hold people accountable? Where is your
I was
compassion?
asked
You know
to
what?
serve-
If you had a little
I
bit
was
more
appointed
kindness
to
and
this part- I was
compassion,
a-
I bet the whole entire group would have a lot more
I was appointed to.
productivity. But I don't know what productivity you're producing.
I was appointed to this board in order to help oversee the operations of the animal shelter. And members of the public, I receive complaints, so forth, and I feel an obligation to follow up on those.
And that's fair, but where's the empathy and compassion while you're doing that? You can accomplish things a lot better instead of always making assumptions and accusing. That's all you've done since you've been here.
You know, I haven't made
That is
assumptions.
it. Oh my God, you've made every
receive
assumption about
information,
this
collect
cat.
information and so forth.
You have made every assumption. All I'm saying is that you could be more productive if you showed a little compassion and empathy and came up with solutions instead of just targeting people.
I have something to say also. Me too. So I'm the manager of PetSense. I've been the manager of PetSense for 3 years. For 3 years. Since she's been in there is the only time that that shelter has loaned cats to my store for me to help adopt out. 3 years. I was told no by the previous managers. No. Completely no. Now, when those cats get sick, we watch them all day long. We have mini checks. She is the first one to come get them. They go straight to the bed, like that. I have been over the shelter numerous times without any knowledge of me coming. I'm taking pictures, multiple pictures to put on my Facebook, my PetSense Facebook. There's never been a time that I have seen it dirty, never been a time that there has been a huge mess, that anyone has been left alone. And this is winter, spring, summer. Here we are. We're out in the summer. There's never been a time. And I say, hey, Lindsay, I need an adoption event. Okay, Carrie, when do you want it? That's it. She's more than willing. Or she'll say, hey, Carrie, I've got too many cats, I've got too many dogs, let's do an event. She is working with me as well as I am working with her. Now, for the past 3 weeks, I've seen her be attacked left and right. Left and right. And it isn't fair because she would not have as many adopted cats if she wouldn't have said, hey, Carrie, work with me. We adopt out a lot of cats in my store, a lot, because I have traffic. when you have a shelter that can't get employees, and I will say can't get employees, that they can't stay open, then you need to give me those cats. I can get those cats. We do the same process as they do, except I have out-of-towners. I have people coming in my store all the time. But the last 3 weeks, I've seen her nothing but attacked, and that is not fair. The day she was hired, she came to my store, shook my hand. Same day. She introduced herself to me, said what her goal was, and I stand by that. As for the euthanization of animals, prior to this, I do know it was a kill shelter, and I do mean a strong kill shelter. There is a difference. There is a difference with giving a cat or a dog a chance of life. There is. My father right now, he's in hospice. He's dying. He has a death sentence of cancer. So to your response, that I should go kill my father because he has a death sentence of cancer and he is suffering at home. That is the same thing you just laid on her. The exact same thing.
No, it's not the.
Yes, sir, it was. Because you said that cat was sick. That cat should have been put down. Whether she sat there and let it go. So that is, sir, the same thing. Every life is the same. Whether it is an animal or it is a person. And that is how it is. You did put a death sentence the same way as if I should go home and take my dad out.
Well, when it comes to the animals in the shelter, or animals that are in my own care, if they are suffering and death is going to be imminent, I am going to err on the side of euthanizing that animal.
And every time there's a miracle.
You know,
I'm sorry.
I am
do
not
not agree
going
with
to
you.
hold, in a shelter situation, I am not going to hold out for the miracles if I'm making that decision. Just not going to do that.
That's your
It's
opinion.
very difficult.
Your opinion is your opinion, but to
Yeah, I
attack a
understand.
person for her opinion is not the same.
It's more difficult on the animal side because it's very difficult for them to communicate when they're in pain or not in pain.
And my dad
You
has
don't
no
know
speech
that.
right now. It's very
So it's
difficult
all
for
right, I
him to
understand.
communicate
I'm
his
sorry
son.
that you're going through that with your
So
father.
it is the same.
Yeah, I am facing the same with my own father. I'm bringing hospice in before very long as well. So I
Yeah.
understand those are hard decisions, but.
It is very hard decisions.
I
And
am-
once you get in that place, you'll understand what your decision you just made today.
I'm gonna say something. Warren, my question is, this is my first time too watching this meeting, and I'm sorry, I do feel like Lindsay, this board really needs to stand up for this girl. You've got a good one in your pocket, but what Warren asked, you're standing here wanting this report, this report, but then out of the other side of your mouth, you say, I want you to run this shelter, you need to do this, you need to do that. She doesn't have all day to sit around and find reports or to do reports. She's busy running the shelter. Or people are demanding a report, just like you want your public report again. She doesn't have time to do this all day long. She's managing the animal shelter, which you want her to do. You turn around, like, this is it. You need to stand up behind this girl and applaud her for what she's done. I saw too what Jenny had over there. It was ugly. It was awful. And what this girl has done so far is you need to be congratulating her or thanking her instead of this cutting down. But you can't talk out of both
It hasn't
sides of your
been all
mouth wanting
cutting down.
these reports and then telling her to run the shelter.
I have spoke
Who has time?
I have spoke publicly and privately to Lindsay. Lindsay would, I think, can tell you that after she was here a short period of time and she had reduced the number of animals that were in the shelter, the number of cats, I came into the shelter and I told you I thought you were doing an exceptional job.
And then explain that here. Don't fry her. You fry her. I mean, there is a way to come across and ask for the information that you want.
I have been asking for the reports
You just added
for
it
several
tonight.
meetings.
These aren't the reports that you asked for.
I just don't understand what more.
I've offered to come in and help put them together so they can be put down. But you need to see the numbers on a reliable basis to understand what's happening there and to be able to follow and monitor that the shelter is being ran properly.
You realize Jenny didn't always plug things into Pet Point.
I understand that everything doesn't get plugged into Pet Point now.
It
I
does
understand
now.
that we have animals come in that don't have kennel cards at times. You know, it's not, there's a long ways to go,
I
and I
guess
don't
what's your
expect there to be
solution
totally
then?
overnight.
Because my solution here is that, one, we give Lindsay the credit that she deserves, and we recognize her for turning the shelter around, because Jenny was just killing the cats and dogs. You and Tammy, after my first board meeting ever, pulled me aside and told me all the horrific things that had been happening at the animal shelter for so long, and said Jenny needs to go. You both pulled me aside, and I was unaware, because I wasn't from here, and my dogs have not been adopted from our local shelter, but you told me all these horrific things that have been happening at the shelter. And then we say, hey, let's get our shelter to no-kill, which again, let me reiterate, that means adoptable animals. It doesn't mean that animals who are suffering and we have euthanized should sit and suffer. That cat did not sit for 2 days that you keep bringing back up. But we get into this, and now because the board's wanting to move forward with getting the shelter to this no-kill status, now it just seems like you're against it. And it's just, you contradict yourself constantly. So what is your solution? For one, I feel the shelter's not adequately funded. We cannot pay our staff what they deserve. If you're in there cleaning, it's terrible to make whatever the kennel techs make to clean, to deal with the dogs, to deal with the cats. It's not adequately funded. If you look at the interlocal, it's pathetic. What everyone gives is pathetic. The shelter budgeted for the shelter to run, I think, like $225,000 to run the shelter, and then only allocated a portion of that money, expecting the rest of the money to come in through donations. So that's one thing that we can revisit, because Lindsay has to have staff that she can rely on to be able to do her job, and she deserves a day off. I know you don't think she does, but
No,
she deserves.
I don't understand. I
a
have not
day
said
off.
she doesn't deserve a day off, period. And what is it that I contradict myself on? You tell me well, what? Give me some specifics that I contradict myself on.
That fact that you pull me aside and you tell me, oh, all these horrible things happened at the shelter and we can't be a kill shelter, blah, 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 and then you're like, oh, we need to be a kill shelter. You didn't specifically say that, but anytime I bring up a no-kill status, you're against it. You're completely against it.
I had problems with the policies that you handed out, the language that had in those, that had the situation that basically we would spend whatever amount of money was necessary to treat, that was the language. You argued with me that it was there, and I said, here it is,
It
it's
says
your
that.
words.
Again, adoptable versus not adoptable, and there's some metrics for it.
Mhm.
And say a dog comes in that is hit by a car, isn't gonna walk. The likeliness of that dog getting adopted is really low, and in that situation, unless you can immediately pull it to a rescue, and there are rescues who
Correct.
take paralyzed dogs, that dog probably should be euthanized, because
Correct.
the shelter is not a safe environment for the dog. It requires a lot more. I had a paralyzed dog.
Mhm.
And the dog, Albert, Joy assessed. It was said that there was a lot of concern brought up about Albert and his welfare and his quality of life, and he is fine. He is going to have a quality life. You saw him today while you were in the shelter, running around, wagging his tail.
Mhm.
But in 1 minute, we're hearing it's inhumane to keep him, and then the next minute, we're hearing it's not inhumane to keep him.
You have heard from me that it's inhumane to cage dogs and animals for months on end without being able to find them a home. I'm not wanting to euthanize based on time, never have stated that on adoptable animals, but when you have animals that have major medical health problems and you're not being successful finding them a home, and they're kept in small areas,
Name which
so on
one
and so
has
forth.
a major medical health issue.
For quite some period of time, it is a problem.
Tell me what
And
dog
we were
has a major
addressing,
medical
we were addressing
issue.
as to how policies on euthanasia was going to be written, and we were having policy discussions. I didn't get into discussion on a specific animal that was there.
Okay, but I'm asking you right now, what animal has
I
major
am not
medical
aware
issues?
of one that has been there right at the moment, other than the one that you're talking about that was in the back, that's had the problem with the back legs
But
and so
he's
forth.
not got major medical issues. You said
And,
major. Is that a major
I
medical
understand today
issue?
you have found a home for him at this joint.
But is that a major medical issue?
I don't know enough details on that particular dog.
And Joy, our
to
vet
know.
on the board, does, and she has said numerous times that it's
I-
not a
not
major
either.
medical issue.
But we were looking at policies in general, And
I'm asking you a question.
Well, I don't know enough about the condition of that particular dog to give you an
Thank you,
answer on
that's
that
all I need,
question.
thank you.
Okay, I think this has gone far enough. Report from Humane Society?
The only report from the Humane Society is at the last meeting, there had been some discussion over the Humane Society operating a volunteer program up at the shelter, and after visiting the shelter and seeing problems that we feel exist there, it's going to be quite some time before we're going to be involved in that. And the feedback that I've received from Lindsay, she's not wanting a volunteer on the Humane Society side of it, so we seem to be in mutual agreement that that's not going to happen at this time.
I've returned all the funding and notified the donors that we will not be funding the cat room or doing any of the other projects that the shelter board and the public had requested.
That's fine.
Because an evaluation was done.
By
and
whom?
By the Humane Society.
Which Humane Society?
The one here locally. And I went in as the vice president.
Okay, but there's only 4 of you, right?
I'm not gonna have a
No,
conversation
no,
about
let's
the
ask.
Humane Society
No,
about
what
the
I
shelter
want to know
board.
is what is the Humane
We're not
Society?
going to do that here.
What does
You
the
can talk
Humane-
to me outside about the Humane
Okay.
Society.
Wait,
Have a
I'd
shelter
I'd like
board
to
meeting,
volunteer my time
then you can see me
for
outside.
management to help her.
Oh, that's a good
Okay,
idea.
if she needs something, I'll be more than happy to come in and help you.
He's an operations manager, a
I would be
I would be
multi-million
more than
dollar
happy to come in and try to help you and help put things together and give you some time, because I don't want you chased away.
That's
You're doing a great job.
Well, you
I don't
need-
want you to be discouraged.
You need 2 positions here. You need a manager and you need a director. She can't do both. That's obvious. You can't do both.
Thank
I would
you.
be more than happy to come in and help.
Thank you, Mr. King.
But as
And I
far
would
as, the-
volunteer my time.
as far as the Humane
You would be
Society,
great.
what is it that this Humane Society is contributing to the animal shelter is what I'm trying to figure out.
Nothing.
What
They're not
is it that
contributing
you
anything
guys,
directly at this point. There was discussions over,
but why not?
because
You don't
we're
ask
not
how can we
satisfied
help-
with the
How
care
can
of
we
the animals
help
that are
you?
there.
Okay, so I'm gonna throw another thing out here, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna just jump right in the middle of this, because she's in a big ball of fire. Why wouldn't you guys help?
Yeah,
She's in
exactly.
a big ball of fire ever since she walked into that
And
position.
you hired her.
And you,
I
everybody should be
recommended
trying to
her- I
help her,
recommended her.
bail her out of this to make things where
And
she's
help her.
not fighting a fire constantly,
So
because that's what she's doing.
So instead you're pulling all your funding from her. Nope, nope,
Well,
nope,
there
you're not
wasn't
doing
So
any
let's
funding,
just
there
make it
wasn't
harder
any
for
funding
the
there
shelter.
Quite some time.
Tammy just
Come on.
said, we're pulling all
What
the
I
That's
said,
not right.
we're pulling all of our funding that would have gone to the volunteer program.
weren't-
Previous funding had been
existing.
It
removed
doesn't
on the
look like you need a
spay
volunteer program until you can get the shelter.
Right.
We need to get the ball of fire put out.
And I think you'd be great at that.
Well,
He would, and he's perfectly happy
I
to do
mean,
it for free.
I'll come up there and help.
Great.
He'll come up.
Thank you.
And help put things together. We can
If
put
you need
procedures and
help, let
protocols
us
together,
That would be,
lighten the
That would be
load.
wonderful.
that would be great.
That would be
You know?
wonderful.
This is just
Well, that would be
ridiculous. You guys keep telling her what you need. There's a different report every time we come here,
Yeah.
you know.
I have to tell you, there's at least 1 or 2 new reports you want every time.
And
She's
none of
got
you
it
run-
and you want
yeah.
something new.
And none of you run this by Robert's rules, just so you know. This is a free-for-all when you
I
come here.
understand that.
It is.
So how do you
It
think
is.
she's feeling?
And I don't run the meeting.
Well, I understand that, but I'm just saying.
But she gets beat up all the time.
The social media
I see
is
that.
great. It's wonderful now.
Thank you, Kelly.
We're
for
seeing
It's awesome.
that.
That one, right there in the corner, she's the one
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have been able to do it if you weren't as welcoming when I walked in the door. So for somebody now, I'm seeing the full picture of how much, I see a lot of support, but I also see a lot of
I think we need to see
beating up on her, and it blows my mind.
how do we
Why
help
nobody
you?
ever asked, what do you
How can we
need?
help you, Lindsay, not
Yeah.
Lindsay. This is getting old fast, sorry. Is that we're pulling
And
this?
the
and
story is not always in the numbers. I work in
No.
numbers every day. They can maybe guide, but they are not the end of it. So report away, whatever, but you gotta step in there and you gotta see what's going on, and she is reporting what's going on. She's reporting what she needs. You're more worried about grass in a kennel versus the fact that a company donated the kennel.
Yeah.
You know, you wanna focus on the negative. Again, it's perspective, you know, I'm gonna look for the positive.
It was the community endowment, they reached out to multiple funds from the community endowment.
That's awesome.
And multiple funds donated. So like my dad has a endowment, and
that's
so we
awesome.
donated some money.
That's
We had
amazing.
$1,800 to donate, so we donated it from our funds. Like the
That's
Humane Society that's supposed to help, the animal shelter too, has like $432,000 in their fund.
Did they donate towards it?
No.
We weren't contacted. I personally would have received the call.
It
We
was
did
from
not.
the director of the community foundation that called.
I worked with them hand in hand on it, so I know where they came
Yes, and
from.
I know you did. Thank you, Bobby.
Can I say something?
Yes, you can.
I've sat here and listened to this. And this is my perspective on the Humane Society. Last September, when I got the call, nobody was there. And I was scrambling to find people and bodies. Nobody called me and said, how can we help you? Okay. When the deal with the kennels were in such horrible condition and dogs were getting hung up and we were trying to pour concrete, I didn't get a call and say, we got some funding, we'll help you on those fences. The comment was, let the county do it. The county did do it with the city's help. Okay. Anyway, as we talked about the fencing, same thing. Didn't get any, we'll help you out, we've got some funding. That's when I went to Bill Barnes and we worked, and the man is phenomenal. But anyway, I don't have a problem with the Humane Society and not being involved in it, and then they pulled the funding in February or whatever from her, because didn't like the way things were going when we desperately needed that funding.
Yeah, for the cat
So-
adoptions.
I'm okay with it. I'm done.
You had wanted to ask if the money that was set aside in the building fund could be
Yeah.
used for anything else?
I asked that
Or did-
last-
Did we find that out?
I haven't found anything, so all I know is that it's just defined as a building fund. And I think Ray mentioned, like, maybe just taking it before the public to say, like, are you okay with us taking the building fund money and putting it towards the current building, just to get it fixed up to where, because we don't have a building anywhere in the near
Can that be done, or
future.
does the county
Yeah.
council have to release that
Do you
money
know?
to something
I
else?
think the hiccup is because the director at that time, like if somebody made a donation and didn't earmark it,
Yeah,
like for spay and neuter or medicines or building whatever, it went into the new building fund. There'd be no way to go back and pull all that out, that like your $100 check was earmarked for nothing, so it could be used. I think that's the biggest hiccup.
But going to the public would be the way,
Yeah.
that would be the way to
Exactly.
fix that, go, this is what happened, and this is
Can
what
we
we
use
would
this?
like to
Yeah.
do now.
Because if anyone's been to the shelter,
It-
you know that it's,
It gives me anxiety.
yeah, it's not a good, I don't even know
Like
how
just
you.
trying to,
Yeah.
like trying to work medically and do
Uh-huh.
exams on patients and stuff when I'm in there, like I cannot function in
Yeah,
that.
and I feel that we could put like, I'm just gonna say a grand name, like we don't wanna put too much money into the shelter, but we need to get the shelter to be an adequate environment for medical exams, for the cats, for the dogs, for the public when they come in, and there's some things we can do that are just minor upgrades, there's some things that will require a little more, and it would be nice if we could pull from that building fund just to do these, and then really work towards accomplishing a new building in the near future. I don't know how long we've been collecting money on the building fund, but it seems like it's just always been a conversation of we need a new shelter, we need a new shelter. But there's never been actual, like, let's make this happen, and I'm happy to work on let's make this happen.
I think what we were talking about in previous meetings too, if we become, or if we are able to send to a kill shelter, there are a lot of people that are more willing to donate to a no-kill shelter than they are going to be to the previous status of a kill shelter.
Yeah.
Because people love their animals and they don't want to think that they're donating to something that is just gonna go kill healthy adoptive animals.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
think
and-
that no-kill status is really important.
And I've spoken with larger donors, but they want that no-kill status to be there. They want us, not just a status, but an adoption of the no-kill philosophy is what they want. They want to see us move forward with that. And then they're bigger donations. They're not $100,000. We're talking like we're gonna get a shelter type donations. And I'm happy to continue those conversations. we have to find a space for it. I don't think the jail's the best location, sorry. I just don't. I think it's too off the beaten path. So there's a couple other locations that I've personally looked at. And I think like we can make this come to fruition, but there's other things we have to address as well. Making sure we have adequate funding for the shelter operations to actually operate it properly. But again, that no-kill status is what's wanted of these big donors. They want to know that we've adopted that philosophy and that we're going to do everything we can to get out the adoptable animals.
Ultimately, no-kill rests with the Jefferson County Commissioners. Status of the shelter rests always with the commissioners. So that presentation will be needed to make to all three. Perhaps Bobby can make that pitch for you guys. Currently, the shelter is a kill shelter.
Right. We're at no-kill status, but we're not a no-kill shelter.
Currently, it's a kill shelter, yes.
And Ray, do you know, was there more than one fund established? Because I don't understand why it's difficult to find out unless there's quite a few funds, because the ordinance that was done in 2012, it states that there is hereby established in the Office of the County Auditor, Jefferson County Animal Shelter Donation Fund. Money deposited in this fund may come from any source, including donations from the general public. All non-tax funds received from any source of animal shelter donation fund shall be deposited into this fund. Funds in the Animal Shelter Donation Fund shall be used for maintaining and improving the existing animal shelter, planning and constructing a new animal shelter, purchase of equipment, supplies used to equip or maintain the shelter, and any other purpose as determined and approved by the county commissioners.
So it can be used?
I just read what the language is, the problem that would come into play is if there had been donors that were given the impression they were absolutely donating for a new shelter building. And I don't know what's been communicated there, if there's a separate fund that was established just for a shelter building, but it's in our county ordinances of when this fund was established and so forth. There was also a trust fund at Madison Bank and Trust, but I don't think that exists anymore. I think maybe those funds were rolled into something different. It was the Andrus Memorial Shelter Trust Fund. And to my knowledge,
it still exists.
Does it still exist? Is there any money in it?
Geneva Andrus.
Is there still money in that fund?
Community Foundation.
Oh, okay, it was moved to the Community Foundation.
I mean, unless it's a separate one.
Yeah,
I seem to remember Jenny just put any donation that wasn't specified into the building fund, because she really wanted the
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And like I said, when the deposit was made, it was up to the director's choice whether that went for paid medicine or spay and neuter or whatever, so I'm sure she had funds to do that, anything left
According to
over.
that language,
Yeah.
Got dumped in the building fund, so like I said.
And I appreciate donations for capital improvements and donations towards a new shelter. I think those are very positive things. I have been adamant that we shouldn't be relying on donations for the everyday care and operations of the shelter.
Didn't you bring a bag of cat food to donate one day?
Yeah, I've dropped off a bag of cat food.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't want to throw it in the trash.
Lauren, I do agree with you. So I've looked back at the shelter fund reports for the last 5 years, and the way the funding was done in the interlocal, again, you'll see that the funding's really just a disaster. And the way the funding was done was that the county is going to contribute a certain amount, Hanover's going to contribute a small portion, there's no like metrics for the portions, and then the city's going to contribute a small portion, much larger than Hanover's, but still about half of what the county is doing. So back it up 5 years, the shelter's been pulling in enough money in donations to help cover those costs. And the shelter had the DOC girls. So then you take COVID, we lose the DOC girls, so shelter costs, well, they weren't up because they just weren't there, that no one was running the shelter, no one was working. But then as we're getting into this year with inflation and just the cost of everything, people don't have extra money to just give to the animal shelter. So we see a significant decrease in our funds that we've received donation-wise. think we've like received 20,000, just under 20,000 donation wise to date, and those are all distributed into specific funds. But it's significantly less. We're halfway through the year, and in the past 5 years, we've received about $75,000 in donations a year. We're at 6 months and it's $20,000. So that right there is proof enough to say we cannot rely on donations
Correct.
whatsoever. I am 100% in agreement with you that the donations should be for the extra amenities, the cat rooms, the splash pads, those sort of things.
I feel
The
that-
shelter has to be funded by the
Yes.
entities that are
Yes,
involved.
I feel that Lindsay has enough on her plate that not to put the burden of having to go out and look for donations
yeah.
to run the shelter as well. Have been very, very adamant, and that had been a long-going battle with the county over the years. The reason that the Humane Society pulled out of the shelter, and I can more than glad to give you a copy of it, that years ago, was we could not get the county at that time to step up and fund at the levels to where proper care for the animals could be provided, and was not going to be a part of it ongoing at what the county was wanting to do and what they were wanting to do on the euthanasia side as well. You know, at those times, if we fought battles of knowing what it was worth, we came in, it was when they were putting the dogs in the gas chamber, 10 or 12 at a time, a carbon monoxide homemade chamber, same thing on the cats. And I have fought a lot of battles there for the humane care of the animals over the years. So I have a great deal of experience and knowledge as to what's
I
involved
agree
in
that
that
we need to
shelter.
adequately fund the shelter. It means that the county's gonna have to step up, the city's gonna have to step up, and the town of Hanover's gonna have to step up. And I just like crunched some numbers, and they're probably outdated now because I crunched these back in like April or May, I can't remember, of intakes from county, city, Hanover, and about, I think it was like 4% of the animals coming into the shelter come from the town of Hanover. And then the remaining 96% is about a 50-50 share between the city and the county, with most cats coming from the city and most dogs coming from the county. So then if you look at the share of funding, and that would mean that Hanover needs to increase their funding significantly and I just plugged in a number of like, okay, what if we fund the shelter at like $300,000? That means Hanover's gonna have to go, if we did it based on percentage, from $4,100, I think it's like up to $15,000 that Hanover would need to be contributing to have their fair share. And there might be even a conversation with Hanover, because Hanover uses the county animal control officer to say, you're also using our animal control officer, because the county, Hanover doesn't have their own, so they may need to contribute to that as well. And then the city needs to up theirs as well, so the city gave $44,000, and I think the city, it brings us up to like 120,000, and then the county would be an equal match with the city, maybe more than 120, that math didn't make sense. I have it written on a different piece of paper, but it's gonna be a conversation that we need to be having ASAP with the town of Hanover, with the city, and I've already had these conversations with Mindy, who helps with our budget, and then the county needs to have this conversation. I'm not sure how you guys' budget works, but the county needs to have this conversation, because we're
Next
gonna
month.
see, and we're going to see an increase, and it's very evident if you look at any of these numbers and you pull past reports, that we can't rely on donations. $75,000 is not coming in this year. It's just not. But Hanover, I don't know how Hanover works. I know when we've asked them to contribute more in the past for other things, they didn't. So I don't know if that would be something that we'd want to look at and
One
providing
thing
those numbers.
that you need to keep in mind with Hanover and the city of Madison, and this overall on the funding side, all of the residents of Hanover and all the residents of Madison, they pay the same county tax rate that all the other county residents are paying. So there's somewhat of an argument, if all the county residents are getting this for their tax rate, why shouldn't the Hanover residents that are paying in the same tax rate, plus they have to pay their Madison tax and their Hanover tax on top of that? So it's not quite as clear cut of saying animals are coming from Madison or coming from Hanover as to where the funding should be coming from.
I still think a $4,100 contribution isn't very much. So it's.
No, I understand that as well.
We do have our budget meeting starting next week.
Okay,
so,
okay. I know of-
one voice, but.
Yeah, and I've written notes, but I have like the last 5 years and everything, because I needed to present. I needed to present to the city
Right.
too, of like, what in the world is this? So, I have that, and if you need it, just let me know.
Okay,
So
that'd
how
be
does
great
it
if
work?
you'd email it to me.
I'm not in government, so she prepares a budget. You give it to the county,
I propose it.
and then they say, you agree to the whole budget, or you agree to, this is how much we'll pay, and then how does it get passed on to Hanover
So,
and
it's an
Madison?
interlocal agreement.
So the three groups come together and sit down and talk about it?
Yes, that's,
Okay.
so the interlocal agreement, do you have it in front of you or no? I think, is it that the city, so it, like Warren said, it needs to be updated. Does it say the city's contribution is like 15,000 or something?
No, it's higher than that, I think.
The city's contribution
It's
is
not much,
44,000, but in the
Yeah.
interlocal, it's outdated, it might be 15 or
Yeah, because the county was only
17,000.
40,000.
Yeah, so it's really outdated, and no one
years.
fully knows where these numbers have increased from.
Yeah.
I've tried
Probably
to track down,
percentages instead.
that's what I was thinking, is the
Number.
percentages, but there needs to be some
sure what ours
reason
says.
for that.
Mm-hmm.
And there hasn't been in the past, from my understanding.
Yeah, it's still labeled out in the interlocal at 15,000.
Yeah, that's what I thought, and so one of
County,
the,
county was only
4,000.
47,000, right?
so one of the questions that got asked by the mayor was, where did we get to 44,000? Where did that come from? And there's no, that's the latest interlocal agreement that Warren has before me, because I
Yeah, I
haven't
looked
found
it up.
anything else.
I looked it up beginning of the year, I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah, so it's really outdated, which we've noticed. You'll notice if you start paying attention and going through the boards that have interlocals, a lot of them are actually outdated,
Outdated, yes.
so.
Yeah, they need to be updated every 5 years anyway.
I don't,
All of them.
every year, just touch base, say, hey, do we need to update this? No, we don't.
Whose
Like,
job is it to do that?
Updated.
Whose job is it to update the agreement?
Well, I mean,
Is that something?
if
we
they
have
set,
to do,
if they
or-
set a policy, it'd be the commissioners
Commissioners
and the city and
And the town of Hanover would work together to form that
The
language.
interlocals have to be approved by the commissioners and the county council. The same over on the other side, it would be by the county or city council and by the
And
mayor.
they have to get together.
And they have to get together and put
To
the,
write it.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
nothing simple in government.
No, no.
especially when there's, like the interlocal, and the interlocal is needed, and because every entity is contributing to the funding, so when you're all contributing, you have to have that interlocal agreement.
Did the county give money to the animal shelter like you did the health department and the fire departments and all that from the money, that COVID money? No.
No, there's
Stipulations.
several stipulations, public safety being one of them, and
Okay.
And to the entities that stayed open during those
Yeah.
months that everything was shut down.
Okay.
Shelter did not.
Yeah, it was a lot of gray area.
yeah, we actually hired a consulting firm to walk us through it all, so we didn't screw anything up. Anything else from the public? Motion to adjourn. All in favor?